Welcome to an emergency special rock and roll edition Adrian Hana Dragon event. Yours truly, laying the foundations for the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, for the North American Collective, for the Imperial Republic of the Workers of the North American Collective, Canada, United States, joint fused with 718 trillions of kisses. You heard that correct. Got those trillions of kisses from the goddess. I was a bit moody, just a bit moody, but had a little bit of a snack and said my gratitude, did some reflections as today I rested all day, meditated, did some hours of geopolitical analysis. As you know that I'm not just an artist, an athlete, independent artist and athlete, but an independent androgynous pansexual Aspie. Have that Asperger's, aka ASD level 1, autism spectrum disorder level 1 is a condition which I live with, and my special interest being that is geopolitics, and that's what I do hours and hours on a daily basis. And I did it as well today as I do it in a ritual routine manner. I have my ritual routines as many people who are on the spectrum do, and sometimes I get moody. I get a bit moody, but some things to be grateful for. Although financially stressed at the moment, my rent's paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, paid my phone. Thank you, my anonymous friend who sponsored the phone. I got this phone sponsored last year, and finally, at the beginning of March, I paid it in full, an interest-free loan. I guess interest-free loan, and I managed to pay it. By the end of the month, I still have to pay my monthly phone plan. I'm about a month late, so I'm gonna have to double it. But here I am, emergency special storm. The storm commences, was a bit delayed. Had some delay to the storm here in Montreal, Hawk Island, and I gotta salute the workers who put some salt, and the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the electricians, and feel much better that I started to work out a bit. It's gonna be a workout rock and roll geopolitical event, and priestess of the goddess, yours truly. Keep my name out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing, rebirthing during this COVID, marking, celebrating 6 years since I died of COVID right in this room off Sun Temple 6 years ago. In 2020, March 11th, I was very sick and ill, and I remember my anonymous friend giving me hot things. She was taking care as well as she could, and making me hot teas with honey and other hot liquids, and giving me some compresses which I had on the body, and right here in this room of Sun Temple 6 years ago. And I moved here. I moved here with nothing really 10 years ago. July is gonna be the 11th year, so after July is gonna be marking 11th year. I moved here with nothing. I had many jobs which I loved over the past years, but fortunately, even during COVID, with my neurodivergence, I live with Asperger's, so I'm on the spectrum, and has been a very difficult road to accept fully. It took me more than 7 years to finally accept it because I've been semi-officially diagnosed since about 2015 and until about October 2022. So it took me more than 7 years to accept my neurodivergence known as Asperger's autism. And my brain is different. I'm part of this tiny small minority of people who live with this autism condition on ASD level 1, because Asperger's and high functioning autism, they merged kind of like twins with one body, two heads, if you will. But they merged around 2013, 2014 in that diagnosis. But it's not a mental illness, it's not a disease. It's just that our brains are different, so we perceive the world differently and we process information differently. And thus, it can be more hard for us to maintain long term employment and long term friends. And from today onwards, don't want to waste anybody's time. Don't waste mine. If you're 18 plus, we can play on that rainbow, black and white, or rainbow. If you're black or white, or a man or a woman, or trans or woman, friends with benefits, I'm always open for friends with benefits, or pledge allegiance, legions. Thou art family, pledge allegiance, legions, thou art family. And we gotta rock and roll it for the creation of the dancing goddess army and the dragonomic. Consequently, make acquaintance with hundreds of my transcripts over the past years, and I feel much better. I've been depressed and suicidal. I had scars. I survived COVID, and I am androgynous, pansexual, in the open for as long as I can remember. Even have rock and roll rap songs related to that rock and roll because I'm an artist as well. But friends with benefits, 18 plus, black or white or rainbow, and I'm financially stressed, but I'm rich and affluent, and 718 trillions of kisses, and whatever the case may be, of course, in the parameters of the of the levels of the individual and the collective, as we have, of course, the plateau to be related to our life's events, and of course to correlate ourselves in the dynamics, of course, of being left or right and in the middle. And that's something which we have, of course, now to expound and salute the truckers on the road. Stay safe, truckers, bakers, butchers, nurses, electricians, daycare workers changing diapers, and construction workers, hydroelectric workers on the field now is dangerous with ice, gotta I still have electricity, so I'm probably gonna have electricity. I'm probably not gonna lose it, but we might lose it in our neighborhood as well. So gotta be grateful for this electricity, which is zero pollution. Those dams were built with brains and muscle over the decades. It took decades to build those dams, and we have now electricity. And I'm doing this video with clean zero pollution energy and electricity. And in my brains, there's always some mathematical calculations going on, and I was calculating the fact that the price of gas has increased, and unfortunately, many of my fellow citizens are dependent on the prices of gas, and might there's warnings and warnings in the past 24 hours that prices of food will increase, so food security being an issue. And I gotta, of course, do a little bit of hydration because I'm gonna be hydrating with coffee actually. So we're gonna be hydrating with some coffee, but now it's a bit strong concentrated, so I'm gonna add some water to it. Let's see what it do. And we're gonna be having a coffee with Adrian Hannah Dragon special storm event because it's supposed to be very stormy, and in the United States as well. I always put it up my strategies, initiatives. I'm always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, always for the 63. I'm a mystic. I believe in reincarnations. I was born in the United States 3 times, post 76. Once I was a woman, and twice I was a man, all served in the same United States Armed Forces, same U.S. Army, 2 different wars. The wars were 156 years apart. And you know how it is. This YouTuber got a lot of ideas and initiatives, and I'm also a mystic. I think the table is God, Goddess. I don't have all the answers. So cheer to the forgotten goddess on this stormy, stormy day. Is about to be a little bit of ice rink out there in Montreal, Hawk Island, severe storms. Schools were closed today, probably even tomorrow. And I was supposed to work today, do some volunteering, but the food bank had closed today in Montreal for security reasons. Even it's closed tomorrow. So they decided in advance, preemptively, to close for 2 days. So that is something which we also have to prepare because Mother Nature, we have to work together with Mother Nature, inconsequential, to create the dancing goddess army and the propositions, of course, of where we are now internally to get the dynamics. And it's, of course, something where we have to partner up as a mass public private partnership. My dream is fundamentally a call for a mass public private partnership. Let's have a taste of this coffee, see how it goes. Cheers to the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the welders, train conductors, the daycare workers changing diapers, all the workers of the NACWP that our empire rise and be for the Democratic Republic of Fuse, Canada, United States in my way for many years. My theories, propositions are being discussed, and get acquainted with my transcripts, read them like scripture, rock and roll. And of course, officially, my dream is a mass public private partnership, consequently, for the rehabilitation of the North American collective of the Imperium. Of course, today is all I got, and celebrating 6 years since I died of COVID. But I got a lot of things to be grateful for. I got this new table here on the side that you see here. It's red at the bottom, my favorite color, and it has 2 sides perfectly, providentially. One to symbolize Canada and the United States. So every day I kind of merge them together because we got a fuse merge, but with my public-private partnership vision, and I got to call a little call it a heart for the billionaires to give some charity finance, some women's sports finance. If I would be a billionaire, I would finance food security because that's myself a recipient of food security, but also the PVHL, Professional Women's Hockey League, and dancing is my favorite sport. Dancing is my favorite sport. I love to dance as the priestess of the goddess. Adrian Hannah Dragon, keep my name out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing, otherwise it'll be pestilence. Hope you have an understanding. And the dancers of Utah High School, I would love to give them a few $1,000,000 because they're the best dancers in the universe. High school dancers in Utah, the drill dancers, you gotta watch it for yourself. They're just so good, and nobody dances like the drill dancers of Utah. And it's just, I love dancing, So dancing is my favorite sport, and now I'm androgynous pansexual. But if you're 18 plus, you gotta be for that play. 18 plus, I'm gonna card you, otherwise I'll send you back to your send you back. But yeah, dancing. I love dancing and geopolitics 24/7. You know, with yours truly and rock and roll. I write rock and roll songs, French and English, and in the past 10 years here, and I guess 11 years soon to be, it's always been English, French, and Spanish here predominantly in my household. English, French, and Spanish. And I got this chair. Thank you, my anonymous friend, for bringing me this red chair, auctioning it for 1 billion to give her half. This red chair, I'm auctioning it for 1 billion to give her half, and that's what it is. Consequently, and of course, in the appellation, in the domain where we got now, to be the strategies, of course, the complementation where we got to coexist and suffusion, and of course, the suffusion where we got now is, of course, the domains, and of course, all that appellation is, of course, something which we got to be instrumental about, and that instrumental about is something which we got to officiate. But I'm auctioning this red RED for 1 billion, 1 billion to give her half. If I would have 1 million a trillion, I would buy her a house tomorrow. But financially stressed, but I'm rich, affluent, in kisses and marching steps. Already marched last week more than the generals of NATO. 6 yards to the left, 6 yards down the middle, now six, that's 18. To get that first down, but my first down is, of course, building the Forgotten Goddess Temple with that touchdown and the Imperial People Coliseum. As you know, I want to build the 4 buildings in the North American Collective, and I gotta salute the construction workers. Construction workers, rock and roll 24/7 for them on those cranes, and the train conductors, those flipping some cheeseburgers. I admire the fast food workers. I wouldn't last a day, and with my neurological mental. Well, actually, maybe with my, but because there's clear, I would have to be repetitive, clear instructions, right? So I would have to learn the system. But yeah, I could probably do it. But maybe with the dynamics, because Aspies, people like myself on the spectrum, there's a very high, unfortunately, there's a very high unemployment level for Aspie. So I'm going to discuss a bit about Asperger's, and then I'm going to go into my dream. And that my dream is fundamentally a call for a mass public-private partnership to institutionalize a mass public-private partnership in the consequential appellation where we have now to be correlated in the domain. And of course, all that relationship is, of course, what we got now to be coefficient and to establish this mass new American-Canadian compromise as a mass public-private partnership via my geopolitical vision for total world peace and BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, by fusing Canada and the United States and creating the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions. The Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, to serve only for security, service, and defense, and of course the Dragon Army with the Dancing Goddess Army, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, to be for the environmental education and action, because it concourse to both being environmentally and education, and we got work to do. And I had many jobs, but unfortunately for my community, the Aspie community, we're a tiny minority. We're a small minority. There's not a lot of people with Asperger's actually, which is also ASD level 1, autism spectrum disorder level 1, or HFA, high functioning autism level 1. Well, ASD level 1 and high functioning autism is the same as Asperger's. So these three names are used kind of for the same neurological mental divergent condition. So we're less than 1% of the population, right? So that's we have certain social skills can be difficult, the way we communicate, and making friends, keeping jobs can be very difficult, and thus high isolation, high depression, and suicidal rate. I was there for a few years. I was depressed and suicidal myself, and that was a hard battle. And Aspies, there's a lot of suffering. Myself suffered a lot, rejections and losing jobs, losing friends, and understanding finally about 3.5 years ago, around October 2022, that I have Asperger's, because for years and years and years I've been told, semi-officially diagnosed, that I'm on the spectrum of autism, and I didn't want to accept it. I was refusing it to accept it and admit it, because there was stigma, right? There's certain stigma around having Asperger's and being autistic. Generally, less and less and less. There's been more understanding on what it is, and not all Aspies, by the way, are good at computer science. There's a disproportionate statistical amount when we co-represent statistically per thousand per capita. How many are? About 1 out of 5, 20% are good at computer science. 20%. Well, okay, can vary between 13.3% to about 19 point something percent. So about 1 out of 5 can be very good at computer science between Aspies, but we're less than 1% of the population. So there's not a lot of Aspies. Myself, I'm just beginning, debutante, intermediary. I'm just beginning now in the past few months, more and more computer science, but I am above average in mathematics. Many Aspies are above average in mathematics, and there's a constant mathematical calculation. I'm not Claude Shannon, by the way. I'm not Claude Shannon, but I'm no Claude Shannon, but that is something which we have to also accept. That I am above average, but I'm not a genius in computer science, not at all. But I'm not a Claude Shannon, and I'm no mathematician, but I'm above average, and I constantly do mathematics in my videos. As you can see over the years, I discuss certain weird Aspie mathematics. As always, calculations, percentages, ratio, distance, velocity, which is kind of occurring in my brain in a constant manner. So such as now today, it is pretty much the main mathematical calculation is a speculative based on mathematical principles of mathematics, such as the price of gas increasing and that percentage. And for example, in the past 7 days, gas has increased in Montreal, at least in Montreal, by 22 cents. But 22 cents per 10 liters, that's $2.20. 40 liters, that's $8.80. When you get to 50 liters, that's $11 already. $11 per 50 liters. So let's say 50 liters, somebody to fill up the gas tank, if it's 50 liters, that's $11 more to fill up the gas tank from last week. So if you fill it up in 2 weeks 3 times, that's already more than $33. 4 times, $44. 4 times is 44. So maybe you have to fill it up in the coming 3 weeks 4 times. That means that you pay $44 more in the coming 3 weeks if you have to commute long distances, right, to get to the job on a daily basis. So it adds up. So $44, considering that most salaries have not increased, is going to hit the pockets of the majority of the populace. Myself, I drive my boots, my steel toes, my running shoes, my sandals, and I take the public transit. So I take the public transit. So, because I mentioned Claude Elwood Shannon, not a lot of people know about Elwood Shannon, but Elwood Shannon was an American polymath who was a mathematician. He's pretty much credited as being an inventor. He's also an inventor, cryptographer, mathematician, who is credited to be the father of information theory and the man who laid the foundations of the information age. But Claude, Claude, that's the first name, and Shannon, 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 Claude Shannon. He was a mathematician, and he was a computer scientist as well. So that's why I said I'm no Claude Shannon, because he's one of the top best. But although paradoxically he's not that well known as Bill Gates or Elon Musk, but he's pretty much he no longer is alive, maybe reincarnated, yeah. But that's why I mentioned Claude Shannon. He was before, just like because I wanted to make to make to clarify why I said that I'm no Claude Shannon. But Aspies have the potential to become like Claude Shannon, because myself am above average in mathematics, although like many Aspies have, and I'm getting better. I gotta recommend the book Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and this one also, Teaching Asperger's Students Social Skills Through Acting All Their World is a Stage. It has a big title, it's like a paragraph. Teaching Asperger's Students Social Skills Through Acting All Their World is a Stage. All Their World is a Stage. I'm understanding it more. I kind of, yeah, it's basically learning how to, to act in certain social settings, and to understand that socials social protocols, unwritten social rules, these can be more difficult for Aspies. But the first book that I recommend the most is Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. That book I strongly recommend. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is the number one book which I recommend mostly. Top place because it's a book which was loaned for me 4 times and which myself I've read and consulted and has helped me tremendously in building these social skills and understanding my difference because Aspies we're different and so that being different in certain ways can impede us from certain things and can make us vulnerable and I certainly learned my vulnerabilities from that book, how these perceptions of Asperger's that we have certain gestures which can seem weird, awkward, and bizarre, and in the public, and we might not fully understand, and we might not even be aware of them unless we're told or explained directly. Because Aspies also we can be pretty direct and straightforward, and can seem abrasive or rude, not because we mean to be rude or abrasive, it's just because fundamentally have our brains fundamentally are different, right? So we process information differently from you, the neurotypicals, which constitute the 99% of the population, and with which we have to build bridges. So you can be a supporter, ally, and pledge your allegiance to our family or friends with benefits only. And got these gloves from 2018. It's still a Dragon versus Trump event after 7 years, and I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match. And it's been a long time, of course, in the situational awareness of what we are today. But these I'm auctioning for $1 million. My anonymous friend gifted me these when I started challenging Granddaddy Trump. Granddaddy Trump knows that I would have voted for Biden and Kamala. And of course, let's build on the Canadian-US border, the biggest ever sports arena Coliseum ever built, the Imperial People's House, the Imperial People's Coliseum, where of course all the Imperial People's Coliseum is gonna be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, which changed name. Like I changed name, the Caesar Superdome, of course, has been, is, and will be, of course, a great place where several Super Bowls have been were fought and battled and probably still will. And one of my favorite Super Bowls is Super Bowl 47, which has several nicknames: Blackout Ball, Hardball Ball, aka Bro Ball, Super Bowl 47, my 49ers lost. It has several nicknames, and of course, such as Super Bowl 47 is known as Blackout Ball, Bro Ball, Hardball Ball, and let's build on the Canadian-US border, the biggest ever sports arena, sports coliseum ever built, and that's how we have to be compromittently to do in a public-private partnership, and me and Donald Trump are going to implement it, of course, in a categorical way where we're going to have now to be correlated, where we got to the dynamics, of course, of the co-representations, and to make it as a mass public-private partnership where we're going to have Sportus in Perpetuities events, and the first event, the inauguration event, is going to be me fighting Donald Trump. So auctioning these gloves for $1 billion. That's what it is. Give my anonymous friend half because she gifted me these in 2018 when I have started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match in the categories where we are to be, fighting for the North American Collective and this Canadian Quebecer who has borne many past lives, many incarnations, once of once as a woman post 7076 in the United States, twice as a man, so gotta get that American Canadian Imperium projection and fuse my way, and no way that you invite fellow Canadians who have, like myself, who are American, Canadian, North American. I got Canada, see? I got the flag tatted up, the maple leaf in Canada written tatted up. Supposedly I got that in 2003 when I graduated high school, although my personal memories, I have very good memories of my personal life over the past 11 years and some months, 11 years and a half, but I have trouble remembering my life prior to January, February 2014, late 2013, but that's a long time ago. That's 12 years ago, because we're March 2026, so it's like retrograde amnesia. I have like blackouts of memory. Sometimes memory comes back, but these flashes, and I don't know if I know I spent in a few years because supposedly I was there since at least November 2010 here in Montreal on the island in a very moldy place. Very moldy, was lots of mold, and of course that mold was, of course, correlated, and of course the mold was, of course, related to left or right, and in the middle, and of course in the category, of course, what we got now. But of course that was the relationship of me being living in a prison type of cell. I guess I served my time to get some good initiatives and encourage all to increase in acts of goodness and kindness. But I lived in a very moldy place, and that moldy place was an underground basement, and I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm gonna probably take a bath tomorrow. And I didn't even have a bathtub, and it was a small moldy place. There was no kitchen. Basically, there was no kitchen, and of course that kitchen was of course absent. It was in my room, so that was of course the relationship where we got now to be correlated in the domains, and that is of course just the stability of having moved here to a better place, and I can't have anybody over because it's too small still, but it's still better than where I used to live. I came here with nothing. I think one of the only things I have besides like the high school diploma from 2003, and supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College because I got good reference papers. I dropped out of college. Many Aspies, like there's a very high, for Aspies like myself, there's a high disproportionate amount of Aspies who drop out of high school, even in higher education, college and universities. And that's the problem with depression. I was depressed and suicidal about since end of 2014, early 2015 till about summer 2017. What got me out of depression was crossing Canada coast to coast, crossing Canada coast to coast. That's what got me out of depression. And of course, I crossed Canada with my anonymous friend. And that's when I crossed Canada coast to coast. And we went by bus, 3.5 day bus ride from Montreal to Vancouver, of course, 3.5 day bus ride. And that was, of course, just the relationship where we got now to co-establish. And of course, 3.5 day bus ride. Yep, from Montreal to Vancouver, 3.5 day bus ride. That was a great experience. And of course, having crossed coast to coast, ocean to ocean, of course, that was the category where we got now to be correlated in the domains. But of course, that was my establishing this great esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and I got the tickets. I'm auctioning them for 1 million, or make a deal, make an offer. They're a bit worn out because that was in 2017, but that event made me realize, had a revelation of how many things we have in Canada to see, to do. And I gotta visit the 50 states next. Grand Canyon, Utah, I gotta go visit the Grand Canyon. I gotta go across the 50 states, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Let's get drill the Dragon Army for total SSD, implement my total mobile defense theory, fuse the RCMP and the FBI into the citizen police service, and do the great census of the Imperial American Republic for mass financing fitness as well as necessary as for years and years and years. Blah blah blah. I've been advocating for the mass financing of fitness, and let's go NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB. Those four sports leagues, the players and the owners, millionaires, billionaires, please reduce the cost of the tickets by 44.9% and give some tickets to the public workers, of course, the public workers. And that's what it is now. And that's how we got consequently to be, of course, in the relationship where we got now to correlate ourselves. And of course, that is just the relationship where we got to make a call at a heart now. Although financially stressed myself, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, and I actually predicted what's happening now. I have the proof. I put it on the small videos. I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. In 2019, I predicted what's happening now. 2019 October, I started the sequential videos, and the sequential videos, of course, what we got now. And that is, of course, just the relationship where we are now to be correlated. And that's just the reflection, of course, appellation, of course, of the victims where we coexist now. And of course, the domains where we coexist in the relationships of ourselves. And myself financially stressed is something which I got to say. Myself in the dynamics where we are involved with. And of course, that is just the relationship where we got now to be coefficient about, and to be exposed ourselves and expounding our position in a way where it includes the geopolitical realities that have been occurring in the past 4 years, at least since Russia invaded Ukraine, and furthermore the Iran conflict. Of course, the Operation Roaring Lion. Last year was Rising Lion, Rising RISING, Rising Lion, and now it's Roaring Lion. So that's, I guess, Rising Roaring. And yeah, myself, I'm somebody who I don't like violence. I do not like violence at all. I am hyper vigilant, though. I survived years and years and go several vicious attacks. I remember I was on the floor once being kicked by several people, and once I survived a vicious, murderous, homicidal in nature surprise attack. I was hit in the head and fell, hit my head, had a dislocated right arm. The right arm shoulder was like almost lost. And I went to the Jewish General Hospital, the emergency department, emergency room at the ER, and the doctors performed the procedure. So I made the request online, and I have to go in person because they send me papers to print, but it's gonna cost, and I don't have a printer, so maybe I have to fill some forms by hand. When I went to the archives, the Jewish General Hospital's archives, to retrieve when did I go, because I don't know when I went to have that procedure performed, because I was all bloodied up after I have survived that vicious surprise attack, murder surprise attack. I survived it, and I went and they put me on some meds, and they gave me like a cast which was holding my right arm, like a cast, and it was a removable one though. So I want to know when did I go and what was the medication. And my memory, I have a good memory of the past 11 years plus, but just before 2014, January, February 2014, and late 2013, there's like blackouts, like I have trouble remembering my life prior to that time. So, but that's a long time ago, eh? So I don't know, whatever the case is, and the consequential where we got now to be related ourselves. And of course, all that dynamical representation is something what we have to co-efficient. And of course, you have to be left and right and in the middle. Sometimes my propositions and my prediction was a more analytical. Sometimes my geopolitical theoretical analysis can be a bit more academic, intellectual in nature, but it takes some discernment, and of course, it is my special interest. That's where I excel most of my work, parallel to artwork. I write rock and roll songs, and I dance, and I create ideas for movies such as Bon Cop, Bad Cop 3, and I'm an artist as well as an athlete, double AA, but I've been financially stressed. I survived last year, for less than 11,000, and in February I survived with less than $888. 880. I survived last month on $885. On 2025 on less than 11,000. I survived last year on less than 11,000. So, but I had jobs. Some opportunity coming this spring, April time. So I got some excitement about that because money is to buy, sell. Money serves a purpose. It enables us. That's why we have to implement my DRT, the Detrofusion Theory ASAP. Because, of course, if you check hundreds of my videos, some from 2022, 2023, for Canada at least, but even for the North American markets and the North American financial markets and whatever the financial operations, I'm no financial expert, but when you study geopolitics, you have to be aware of economics, trade relations, and finance. And of course, money is to buy, sell. That's why my DRT, debt fusion theory for the creation of the UE, is what's best in the concomitant reflections, of course, of where we are now to be correlated. And of course, the dynamics, of course, of being and implementing all these strategies for the North American collective where we got now to coexist. And of course, all that coexistence is officiated in all the left and the right aspects of the spectrum, but it is a mass public-private partnership which initiates, and we're going to establish the Imperial Republic of the Workers, the Imperial Citizen Republic, by the fusion thereof, and a public-private partnership, and we're going to have rules like dance rules and like gridiron North American football rules. Aspies will probably be good at being referees, or coaches. Even referees not so good maybe at playing, but as referees of coaching. And I love gridiron North American football, and I love boxing and sports and fitness generally, but dancing is my favorite sport. Please, NFL, triple the cheerleaders. I've been asking for years and years and years to triple the cheerleaders' salaries. And of course, yours truly is on the dance priestess of the goddess. Always God bless. And God is kiss, always God bless, and God is kiss, and the temple, blah, 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 the temple of the goddess, and the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, grocery store, now the train conductors on the road, crossing coast to coast, and the train conductors, those flipping some hamburgers, cheeseburgers, doing that cooking, doing that delivery coast to coast. And of course, that is what we are now, to be correlated in the efficiency, of course, to manifest ourselves as this bipolar strategy, not to be confused with the bipolarity psychological condition, but with the strategy which I consequently embody as the more mystical philosophical terms, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. Nobody's born a dragon, not even myself. Took me blood, sweat, and tears. And sometimes my dragon says it's not how, if you should. Sometimes my communications or dialogue, conversation with my dragon is general. Is not how many, not if you should work out or not, but of course. How late is it? I didn't keep track of the time. Okay, I'm too loud? Okay, thanks for letting me know. I wasn't. Okay, I'll thank you for letting me know. I'll be quiet. I don't know what time it is. Oh yeah, it's 9:37. It's too late. I thought it was 8. 9:37. Oh, my bad. 9:37 is late. Thank you for letting me know. Oh yeah. That's why with Aspie sometimes you have to be, you know, with Aspie sometimes you have to be like direct, and she's right. My roommate's right. Anonymous friend, if I make a man, gonna give half, but it's it is 9:37. I thought it was earlier. Wow, it's 9:37 already. So she's right. It's late, so just gonna just gonna whisper, I guess. Just gonna whisper, I guess, and wrap up the workout. Eh? These are gonna be my. I'm gonna have a noodle soup, affordable, 2 packs. To eat after this workout. I'm gonna be eating the noodle soup. It's gonna be a little piece of sausage that my friend gave me with bread. So I'm gonna have that with bread, a little piece of sausage and these 2 noodles. I'm gonna mix them in one. So this is gonna be my post workout. So it's a special emergency edition because we've been having we've been having a very difficult time, in the storm season here, and it's stormy. And now I'm gonna discuss a little bit of geopolitics as I stretch, of course, continue to stretch a little bit. But it seems that the winter storm is here, and it seems that it's very icy, and of course, that is something where we have, of course, to be mindful of each other when we live in common. 9:37 already, so yeah, it's something which we have to be proceeding about and be mindful. We live together, and wish I could get a bigger place. I'm grateful for having this place nonetheless, but it's something which I have to be mindful of that. So my neurodivergence makes me that I have as a special interest geopolitics, and when you discuss geopolitics, you have to be aware that it is a deep analytical field. It encompasses many things of civilization and even nature, the geography, the trade relations, the history of different countries. Now, this following geopolitical statement, which I will make now, you cannot argue with, you cannot say no, you have to concord as is yes, right? So, our main interest as Canadians, Quebecers, vis-a-vis the United States, and the United States vis-a-vis us, it is first and foremost as a foreign policy program, protocol, or initiatives. We have to work to establish the most beneficial mutual trade relations, military relations, defense relation. It has to be with each other. So Canada has to place the United States as number one. The United States has to place Canada as number one as well. Reciprocal. Although my brothers and sisters in the United States, you have a border with Mexico. You do have a border with Mexico, but nonetheless, it is with Canada that you have to work to establish the best relations with, not with another country, but with Canada. That is just the way it is. There's no way around that. Consequently, in the major analysis, and that's just the reality. That's why we have a common manifest destiny to fuse. And my ideas, theories for that fusion discussed over many, many, many years now, even since Trump was not president back when Joe Biden was still president. Uncle Scorpio Joe Biden, and it will require Uncle Scorpio Bill Gates and all institutions and organizations to implement my Trinity of theories, the special, the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Debt Fusion Theory, and the DFT, Democratic Fusion Theory, and of course inconsequential theories, which we're going to have to implement and strategize thereof with. So that is just the relationships which we have to say yes. If we cannot say yes to that, we cannot advance. We're at an impasse. That is non-negotiable, what I just said. That geopolitical statement for Canada vis-a-vis the United States and the United States vis-a-vis Canada, each and us, we have to work to establish the best economic, social, financial relations with each other. There's no and not even maybe. There's not even maybe. It is a yes. You have to affirm that proposition, philosophical, geopolitical reality with a yes. You cannot negate or even say maybe to that, right? That is just the way it is. You can't argue with that. That is just the way it is. There's no argument to be made there, right? It's just the way it is. Now, of course, the imposition of tariffs since 2018, I say it was a grave mistake. Granddaddy Trump. There's no way to invite Canadians. You should have organized parties across the 50 states with gridiron dancing and cheerleaders, people to sing across the 50 states. Canada, become our states. Join the union. I should have been your geopolitical advisor on that. And how to strategize, not by tariffs, by economic force. And of course, the statement by Granddaddy Trump was by economic force. But let's fight on the Canadian-US border and build the greatest ever Imperial People's Coliseum for sports in perpetuities, where me and Donald Trump are going to inaugurate it by fighting in a boxing match. And of course, that proposition and statement is the fusion thereof to build the greatest Coliseum ever built on the Canadian-US border, and of course to build the greatest Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, where we have to sufficiently involve ourselves within the domains where we coexist and build that greatest ever Coliseum ever built on the Canadian-US border. And there we're going to have sports in perpetuities, meaning we're going to have sports events 24/7. So that is just the reality, right? It is something which is not negotiable, as we have to work to establish the best, most important geopolitical relations, economic, financial, political, trade, military, security-wise. For Canada, it is with the United States. That is if we are to establish a hierarchy of with which country we have to establish the best economic, social, financial, military, defensive relations with, it is for the United States, and the United States is also with Canada. Although you have a border with the United States. So the best way is to invite us properly. But my way to fuse Canada and United States best via the DRT, that refusion to my fellow Canadians. The king is absent this time for the Republic. The king is absent, and I always say that. What I would save myself was to do little interventions, such as the special interventions of 2016. I'm going to discuss it a bit, because I guess that's why I survived that moldy place, and that's why I survived being viciously attacked by surprise and left all bloodied up. I went to the Jewish General Hospital emergency office all bloodied up and survived that. And in 2026, I get goosebumps here. I get goosebumps whenever I discuss it. And I discovered in a freely distributed newspaper in Montreal. It was in a newspaper called the Voice of the People, and it was 2016, 10 years ago. Whenever I recall it, I get goosebumps and I get horrible memories of that event. I discovered Islamic State propaganda. And the Islamic State propaganda, that's their MO, because the Islamic State Caliphate, they were declared themselves a caliphate on June 29, 2014, summer 2014. RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is the co-equivalent of the FBI, co-equivalent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation here in Montreal, and I did my Independent Citizen Security Initiative or Independent Citizen Security Intervention. Basically, I did a Independent Citizen Security Intervention because I went there and to the RCMP and I delivered the newspapers and I made my concerned citizen report on security. And my action prevented a mass casualty event. No, without a doubt, I saved possibly, potentially hundreds of my fellow Canadians and North Americans because they could have created improvised explosive devices and started to attack people because they were terrorizing the world back then with their brutality. They had a brutality, right? Their warfare strategy was espousing sheer brutality. So that was horrible. It's horrible. And it was a failure of intelligence, right? Our community, the police, SPVM, Service de Police de Ville de Montréal, the SPVM, of course there was a failure on their behalf, right? There was a failure on their behalf, and of course the FBI and Canadian, the RCMP intelligence failure ceases. Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the CSIS, which is the co-equivalent to the CIA in Canada, which was established in 1984, 21st of June, June 21st, June 21, 21st of June 1984, and yes, because of Asperger's and because geopolitics is my special interest, I know these dates of the creation of institutions and events, but that was horrible. I can't believe what I was reading. Islamic State propaganda freely distributed in the newspaper, so even how come it passed the editor, how come maybe the editor didn't even read it and it just got published in thousands of freely distributed newspaper, and it was in Côte-des-Neiges, the most populated borough. That's the most populated borough of Montreal. So my action, that action which I did, performed, and did to go to the RCMP and made my citizen report, I saved people, and of course, if I would have been of the RCMP officers who received that, I would have right away contacted the highest echelons of security of RCMP and the CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and CIA and FBI, and even the Pentagon to do the report and to inform them of this newspaper and this Islamic State propaganda and do a thorough investigation. And the newspaper hasn't been published after in the coming days, weeks, and months after I did my intervention in spring 2016, and I have written to CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I have the letter. I still have the letter there. And they thank me for involving myself in the anti-terrorism work of Canada and North America, NATO as a whole, because they had struck us in Canada, they had struck around the world, and after 7 years, since about 2018 till about 2025 last year, they were dormant, and now even recently, 3.5 days ago, an Islamic State inspired people who pledged allegiance to the Islamic State terror group. They committed a violence in New York. I don't like violence myself, but I am hyper vigilant. I am hyper vigilant, and it's defense only. I'm defense only. That's why my strategies to fuse Canada in the geopolitical complex of the Imperial Republic and the American-Canadian Compromise, to create a common currency, to create the SSD, Legion Security Service and Defense, and rebuild the ghettos and rebuild the infrastructure, the potholes, and mass finance tourism and sports and fitness for channeling aggression and violence in a sportsmanship-like manner. That's why we gotta do it in a sportsmanship-like manner. That's why we gotta do it together, and that's what we have to do. So now I'm gonna discuss the DRT because I'm gonna finalize on the intervention which I did. Without a doubt, I saved people. I saved potentially hundreds, tens and hundreds of people from being harmed. Because that's what that article was asking. Was calling for people to pledge allegiance, as that is their MO, modus operandi. Their MO is to call on people to pledge allegiance to their Caliph. Now they have a fourth one. I think they're to their fourth Caliph now. Pledge allegiance to the Caliph and the Islamic State and attack us here. why I will save myself to prevent actions such as this and to help others. And I am no pretense. I have no pretense that I like wafers or I wish I could afford massage therapy. Friends with benefits, 18 plus, black or white, black man, black women, white men, white women, rainbow, whatever. Just good massage exchanges, I would love to, because I work out a lot. I am very physically active since I crossed Canada coast to coast and got out of depression. But I would love to afford. I can't afford it, but that would be something great for me once in a while. Blah blah. I have no pretense. I have no pretense, but I lust. I get lustful, but I'm not frustrated like that. But anyways, that's something to be channeled and for another discussion maybe in the coming days. And weeks as it is a pre-storm event here, Actually, the storm is beginning, so I guess this is just a little Geopolitiks Rock&Roll fitness video. But yeah, be ever vigilant and stay prudent. And before Asperger's, there's no medication. Asperger's is not a disease; it's just a neurodivergence with which I will live with until the end. But my theories, protocols for the North American Collectif best, and the strategies, the implementation, some theories, and I cannot overly discuss the total mobile defense theory, the TMDT total mobile defense theory, because of course it has, several implementation of which we have now to be correlated, and that's why we're going to discuss it and end the discussion with the DRT, the debt refusion theory. As I finalize one more thing that I am not forecasting 100%, but from the recent events, I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming days, by 19th of March, that gas is $2 in Montreal. So in 7 days from now, it could go up to more than $2 in Montreal. So we'll see on the 18th of March. Today's the 11th. 7 days from now, it could be that gas, and also prices are going to increase. Although the flyer is in, so they cannot in theory increase until the next flyer, because now they're on the market. But then it rotates every week and bi-weekly, so we might see food prices increasing in 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks and 4 weeks, and in April we might witness that because of the new war, the conflict, the intervention, preemptive strike. And I'm not going to discuss. If you want to commission a specific in-depth analysis of current geopolitical situation, and keep in mind that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, and I specialize in 20th century geopolitical events and philosophies and current events, of course, because it's 24/7 geopolitical analysis going on in my brain, and watching different news outlets from CNN to CBC, CTV here in Canada, CTV and CBC and CNN and Fox and Vion. Well, this one is not, is WION. Well, this one, and Deutsche Welle from Europe TV, and news outlets from around the world. I have a pretty top 10 ones which are pretty universal, general, because geopolitics is a global affair and three things never sleep. Geopolitics never sleeps, the sun never sleeps, money never sleeps, and the dragon also said the police never sleeps, the police never sleeps, the police. The 50 states in Canada coast to coast at 3 a.m. But now we have to get the DRT, the debt refusion theory, and the debt refusion theory is something which we have to correlate in our aspects, what we got now to be correlated. And of course that co-representation is, we have to implement my DRT, the debt refusion theory. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, DRT, debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, we have to implement it. The DRT, debt refusion theory. The DRT includes monetary integration theory, the MIT monetary integration theory. So now I want you to focus on my DRT theory and the need to implement it jointly for Canada, United States first and foremost. At the same time, simultaneously, it will require my Scorpio brother Bill Gates and BlackRock and Blackstone and the Bank of Canada, my RBC Royal Bank of Canada, and BlackRock, which is different from Blackstone. They work together evenement is the correlation where we got now to coexist in the official aspects, but the DRT also includes monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. So the DRT, debt, D stands for debt, DBT, debt, refusion, REFUSION, refusion theory, THEORY, the debt refusion theory integrates in it monetary integration theory. So that my theory integrates that theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s by the creation. They created the European Union, the European Central Bank, the ECB, European Central Bank, and they issued a monetary currency called the euro. So my theory integrates monetary integration theory is integrated in my DRT theory, in the debt refusion theory. In the debt refusion theory, in the DRT debt refusion theory. So of course, that is just the relationship of where we have now to be correlated. So now we have the proposition where we are now, that we have to implement it in the correlative aspects where we coexist now in the officinatus, and of course all that relationship where we coexist are of course the relationship where we exist ourselves to be in that dynamics where we got now to be left and right and in the middle, and of course that relationships is of course relationships to establish a new world order. So I'm gonna explain it, focus on it 100%. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000 to the RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, all the public and the private debt, right? So we're gonna add it all up to the addition, all the public and the private debt of Canada coast to coast. We're gonna add it up, we're gonna convert it into US dollars. We're gonna convert it into US dollars. We're gonna add it with the public-private debt of the United States. So all that money, plus the money circulation, we're gonna fuse the Bank of Canada and the Federal Reserve into the Imperial Central Bank. The Imperial Central Bank. We're gonna get rid of the border, create the UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE, the UE, as a biological, biometric affair, and of course you're gonna require all the institutions, organizations, public-private partnership. It will have to be Bill Gates, Brother Scorpio, Bill Gates, Microsoft, Google, YouTube, Palantir, and Federal Reserve, the Bank of Canada, and all the government, left and right and center institutions. We're gonna implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory. So all the debt is gonna be refused. That money circulation is gonna enable us to create this new currency based on the value. It's gonna have the same value as the US dollar, U.Universal, E.Exchange unit, because that's what money is. Money is to buy, sell, aka the UE is gonna be known as the imperial dollar. The imperial dollar, so that's what is gonna be known as the imperial dollar. So basically the imperial dollar is gonna be known, of course, where we have to be correlated in the imperial dollar. So now, fundamentally, where we have now to be relations is gonna mass concord this new reality, a financial, social, political reality. So we're gonna, of course, get rid of the border. We're gonna do a census, the RCMP, the police forces, armed forces, Canada, United States. We're gonna do a census and accord new imperial citizenship, because we're gonna fuse, and it's now gonna be 1 but 13 new states, just like the original. We're gonna fuse to get into new imperial American Canadian compromised from Montreal to the banquet on the new table from the island of the Hawk. We're gonna concord a plateau for total security, total service, total defense, based on my Trinity or theories, as well as the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, and the new 911 Total Dragon Army, North American Protocols for total security, total service, total defense. So that's gonna be, of course, the grand strategy for the total PDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world, by infusing ourselves into complex. So this strategy is gonna enable us coast to coast, ocean to ocean, for the total regeneration. So this enabling will enable us. We'll have to do a census of the population. So that census is gonna be to establish who's gonna be accorded amnesty and citizenship. If you have committed 44 criminal convictions over the past 11 years, we're not gonna give imperial criminal amnesty, but we're gonna implement instead the Imperial Dracula Protocol, the Imperial Dracula Protocol, so we have to discern. There's gonna be a sense, some justice, some goodness, some kindness, and some justice as well, because sometimes we gotta punish, sometimes we gotta punish. Maybe we get punished with that storm now, most of us did. Montreal, Hawk Island of the Hawk. So we're gonna create also the Dragon Army, the Imperial Integrated SD Legion, right? Also the Imperial SSD Legion. We're gonna concord it with creating, of course, the Dancing Goddess Army. Of course, the Dancing Goddess Army is gonna be the Imperial Integrated Dance League, right? The Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League to dance for the environment and, of course, for environmental education and action. So that's gonna be the concordat where we're gonna establish ourselves in the plurality, of course, of being total security and service of defense in the mass concordat of what will enable us to do via implementing my DRT, the Tetrofusion theory, parallel with the total mobile defense theory, the TMDD. When it total mobile defense theory in parentheses, there's a S for system, but once we implement my total mobile defense theory, which I cannot discuss over much because it's by national security sensitive and furthermore for NATO, the North Atlantic Organization security. And if you know, remember that before October 7, 2023, I was advocating via several lectures of which I call the Genesis 33 protocol, based on the biblical story of Jacob and Esau, the twins embracing and making an alliance, a compromise, and a reconciliation of the twin wars, I guess. Genesis 33. Before October 7th, I was advocating for Israel and Mexico to be simultaneously part of NATO and implement my strategies, part of the NATO complex, the geopolitical strategies. Genesis 33 I was calling back then for both Israel, the state of Israel, and Mexico to become the 32nd and 33rd member of NATO. But now we have, in the meantime, Sweden was added. Sweden became, a year and a half ago, became the 32nd member of NATO. We have 32 member NATO countries. Turkey is one of them. And so you can check it out before October 7th, but technically, because in a state of war, a country cannot really join NATO, because how do we invoke Article 5? Because Article 5 was only invoked once. NATO's Article 5 was only invoked once during 9/11, or during 9/11. On behalf of the United States, NATO's been a military defense alliance for more than 75 years, since April 1949. It celebrated last year, 2025, in April, 75 years. 75. It was founded in 1949, and Article 5, which is one for all for one, was only invoked once. But here, the Imperial Republic of the 63 is going to be one for all for one here. But a Dragon Army, we're going to create in each state of the Imperial Republic of the 63. We're going to create a Dragon's Lair for total SSD service security and service protocols, and establish the 40-day training, right? 40 days, brutal training, right? And nobody's born a dragon, you become a dragon. In the coming days, weeks, and months ahead, I'm going to discuss it because I'm still working on it. But of course, it incorporates the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Dragon Army. I perform more Dragon Army workout. I created it back in 2019 to be an efficient, effective, simple workout training program system, which requires no equipment, and which myself I performed more than 372 sessions. I myself performed more than 372 sessions thereof, right? So that's just what we have now together in the complementary. The 372 sessions which I performed. 372 sessions that I performed myself back in since 2019. More than, you can see them online. Here in this room I have some temple, and outside I perform them. It's a simple, effective workout. It has several rules. You have to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 hogs. That trinity of exercises without stopping. And you are allotted 93 minutes, 44 seconds, and 9/11th of a second. 9/11 is to commemorate the 9/11 attacks. Supposedly I was in high school, but I have trouble remembering my life, personal life events before early 2014, late 2013. January, February 2014, November, December 2013, before that. So I have a very good memory of the past 11 years and like 11 months, but just, it's like amnesia for it. When you have that type of amnesia, retrograde amnesia, you don't lose mathematical skills. I'm above average in math, and I'm a polyglot. I speak several languages. I do speak several languages, but you don't lose mathematical skills, linguistic skills with that type of amnesia, because the memory information is not stored at the same place, But I do live, I guess, with PTSD, but that doesn't matter. What matters is my surviving COVID, surviving found 11,000 last year. 1 foot in the streets, 1 foot in the libraries. Read tens of thousands of books. Written tens of thousands of pages on geopolitics, philosophies, theories, and it's Pledge Allegiance, Legions, or if you're 18 plus, you gotta be 18 plus for that play. Friends with benefits only, don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Support a dream, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, the Dragon Army for emergency response always. And auctioning this for $1 million, $1 million, and auctioning the chair and everything that I'm wearing for $1 million to give my anonymous friend half. And yeah, I'm financially stressed, but I'm rich in rock-and-roll. And my Trinity of TVs is, of course, one that needs to be implemented in all the domains where we got now to be coefficient with the naturalities. Of course, the reality of what we have now, establishing the Concordiat and the Dream, the DRT for the creation of the UE, Universal Exchange Unit, Universal Exchange Unit, get imperial dollar. We're gonna mass finance tourism 4 days, 4 times a year. That's 16 days for every equinox and spring, equinox and solstice of the autumn, spring, summer, winter. Once everybody who's 16 and over, citizens of the empire 16 and over, are gonna be financed to go travel anywhere across the 63 of the Imperial Republic from Canada, United States, vice versa, because it's gonna establish the strongest penal core that imperial tourism. We're gonna rebuild the ghettos, and all the ghettos, and we're gonna finance fitness,